You can plan on that.
Yeah.
Camera, not just tell once.
We gotta share.
You're like the school where it moves. They got a guy in the back room that literally watches, that's his job. And don't move it. And I'm like, I go back there.
It's not the guy who does the basketball games, is it?
No.
Yeah, him. I'm like, the ball's down there. Yeah, right, I'm like, I wish I could have seen it. God bless him.
Usually the person who moves the cameras is somebody that he goes, hey,
Oh, there it goes.
can you do the camera for me?
They must get
Actually, as soon as I
distracted.
get the keyboard, it comes on.
Well, yeah, they're watching the game.
Well, that's why I can't take video of my kids' games, because I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
You're doing like this. It's making everybody sick.
Or you start jumping.
Yeah, or there's me in the background. I can't do that.
I just feel blessed that I'm even getting time to choke this down right now.
Yeah, I know, I did the same thing.
That door has to be open since
Are
it's
you good
open to
over
the
there?
public, isn't it?
We have to open this door. It's an open
Yep.
meeting,
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
have to have it
yeah,
open.
that's what Bill just said.
That is correct.
Yes, sorry, we have to have it open since it's an open meeting.
Oh, I apologize.
That's all right.
I was closing this so you guys wouldn't get interrupted.
It's all right.
Jim, are you ready to start?
Yes,
Okay.
you, it's your meeting, I'm listening. Thank you,
Okay.
thanks for asking them.
Yep. I have taken everybody's budget requests and put them into the budget document. And, this is, I wanted to kind of go in reverse order. This is normally where we end up, is the budget summary. Out to the right, you'll see that there is some highlighted areas. That's the increase in levy based on, the requests. Nobody on here, a little ways. And so our levy is at 3.920, above what we did last year. And if you look right over here where this red is, that's how much we would have to cut out of the budget to get it to the 59.907 levy. So as we're going through departments and different things, that's just something to kind of keep in mind if we want to keep flat. So we'll jump right in and start with the general fund unless Tiana, do you guys have dockets so we could go ahead and get started with yours?
No, my assistant has kindly volunteered to handle the afternoon docket, so he's
Okay.
here for now, but I can stay for, and then he'll be back.
Okay, okay. Anybody else need to get out of here quickly?
No.
Okay, then we'll just start with the general fund. When you look at the general fund, you have to keep in mind that revenues for 24 and 25 are generally projected. And I look at the 5 previous years to kind of get an idea of where we've been and where we're currently setting, and then I take the current year and see if we're gonna hit our target that we thought we would. So, delinquent tax is probably the only risky one that, you know, could go either way. It could come in lower, it could come in higher. So, status quo has been about 20,000.
You're good.
So we're looking at revenue right
Only because I'm
now.
blind and don't have my glasses.
I did change the Jayhawk win to say contribution, because that's what we've determined it is. Franchise tax has been pretty flat. Federal grants, that is the EMPG grant that we get for Bryan's area. State grants have been about $2,300. Recording fees, those are all pretty flat. Officer fees is coming in lower. I don't know why that is. That's something that we could research, that we could maybe capture a little bit more revenue there. Interest, last year was the first year we were up on interest. And so I've continued to stay. I haven't heard that we are going to drop any in interest, so I was a little bit conservative in the number, but pretty much kept it around the same. We also get interest off of vehicles, and then our lease has been around $13,000 a year. The reimbursement for the diversion coordinator actually is in a different fund, but when the audit comes through, it's rolled up in through the general fund. And so that $25,000 is not the diversion coordinator, it's other reimbursements to the county that we usually get. We get $35,000 from the city of Fort Scott for shared services, and our reimbursed expenses are usually around $5,000. Motor vehicle, at the end of the year, we get to transfer whatever's left over in that fund. When we took, in '23, we took those employees to a 40-hour work week and increased wages, so therefore the transfer has become less and less each year. So if you scroll down, we're looking at a little bit more than what we brought in last year. And if you look over to the right, that's 2025 column, the 1.289. You have to add that number plus whatever's levied to get what your total resources available are. It just doesn't calculate in the budget document that way. So for expenditures, this is what we're looking at for expenditures, but I'm going to go to the detail because that gives us more information. So over to the right-hand column would be the areas where there was an increase. If there's not a comment there, then there wasn't an increase in that budget. For the county clerk, there's a Department of Labor increase that is effective July 1st and January 1st. July 1st, it only affects one department, and that is the IT department. The other departments that are affected will be January 1. And so this increase includes the Department of Labor increase plus the $12,000 that she needs for a part-time person that had been there in the past but was taken out. Also, her contractual and commodities were cut last year over the prior year, and so she's requesting a little bit of an increase on those two items. County treasurer, she had an increase, a 15% increase in publication costs, isn't that right? That's it. And Department of Labor increase. For the county attorney, there was 2 positions that were added this year. And we'll go back here in a little bit and you guys can kind of talk about what the reasoning is for a lot of this. Register of Deeds, Department of Labor increase. And of course, these are unfunded mandates. Liability insurance increased 12% this year, so we had to build that in. That is K-Camp. District Court, there was an increase in contractual commodities and capital outlay. That's the request for this year. Emergency preparedness, there's a Department of Labor increase built in here. Same for IT. But he also decreased his budget because the software is, we're planning to wait and do that in 2026. So we've pushed that back a year. So that's why his decreased. I also have built in here some of the presentations that you're going to get tonight. And I know the health board, didn't she come last week? Did
Yes, Becky.
Becky came in? Okay, so she's requesting $5,000 increase. The elderly appropriation, area on aging also requested an increase. I know senior citizens did not. And so those are all the increases that have been requested for the general fund. Any questions or comments on the general fund? Okay, we'll move over to the appraiser's fund. There was a The NRP issue that we had this year, totaled out to be about $33,000.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
It should be the,
Page 7.
yeah.
Any glasses down there?
No, we just need her to make it a little bit wider.
The appraisers fund, page 7, is, we are having to address the NRP expenditures. There was not enough cash flow to address that, so there had to be a transfer made from his reserve account, which leaves his reserve account with about $20,000 left in that reserve account for future vehicle purchases or equipment. And we'll have to do a budget amendment in order to handle all those changes for '24. His levy, if you look over here to the right, let's see, I gotta go up, maybe. This is so hard to do on both screens. I don't think his levy changes, but I can't see that on here. Usually it shows it. I must have to do. So his levy pretty much stays flat. He goes from 1.535 to 1.567 in his request. We also built in a $10,000 transfer to his equipment reserve so that we can build that back up since we had to move the $10,000. That's what that big red amount, or that field that's highlighted, is as a result of we do not have the budget authority to do that, so we will have to do a budget amendment. Bridge and culvert, and Eric may want to talk to this fact. We have, it's the next page, should be anyway. We have, we've had cash flow issues in his funds. And so we would like to take the Bridge and Culvert Fund and the Special Bridge Fund and collapse them down into the Road and Bridge Fund so that it allows us to have a little bit better cash flow every month. Because we're to the point like we can't even work on a project until sales tax comes in or until we get our distributions. And our distributions come in January and June. And so it makes it very difficult for them to work in between those months. So we think this will help. So that levy basically gets transferred from Bridge and Culvert and Special Bridge over to the Road and Bridge Fund, and you'll see how that's affected. There will most likely have to be a budget amendment to allow for us to finalize that budget out and move to the Road and Bridge Fund.
And you did talk to,
Our auditor?
yes, our auditor
Yes.
about it as well.
Yes, and she's good with that, yeah.
After, later, I'll have some operation questions for you, how that would work going forward on bridge work.
Yeah, and they are broken out by department.
They're gonna be broke out the same, it's just inside of one budget, that way our cash flow.
So if you stash money and it's for a special bridge, it will still reflect that in your report?
Yes, 100%. It just allows us to use Bridge and Culvert money in Road and Bridge, or Road and Bridge money in Culvert until the end, because it's all one fund, and it's broken down inside that fund.
It's a department within the fund.
That makes sense, as long as we don't lose funding for bridges that you guys have saved and targeted.
Yes,
We
yes.
buy more gravel or something, you know.
That fund is completely separate.
Okay.
Election, there are some concerns with the election equipment. We're trying to work through some of that. But in the event that we would need to upgrade our very, very old system, for 2025, we built in a $20,000 transfer to equipment reserve, which would not cover what we need to do, but it would at least be a start. She does not increase the levy. It does increase her budget a little bit for that transfer. Employee benefits is probably our most expensive fund. And of course, that is all based on what we do with wages. So if we increase wages or decrease wages, it will change Social Security, capers, unemployment. If we cut positions, that'll affect health insurance. And you have to know that that health insurance is not the employer's portion, that's employer and employee. We have to budget for both of them because the premiums flow through this fund. So about half of that is really what the county pays for health insurance. Workers' comp did go up, and so we built that in. And then we always build in a cash reserve in this fund so that we can ensure that we have, because our premiums change mid-year, we want to make sure we have enough money to cover premiums.
So Susan, the difference is from the 3,046,000 to the 1,006,000 is what the employee pays back?
Yes.
That's the number we can
Yeah.
reduce?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I have given a census to Don Doherty to go to Blue Cross and get us some numbers. So he is working on that. Mental health is the next one. You're gonna see an increase in this budget, but the only reason, they did do a $5,000 increase request, which you'll hear tonight. For some reason in the past, we had always levied in the special alcohol and drug fund $4,500 to go to SEK Mental Health. So I moved that levy over to this fund so that it's all in one fund. And the special alcohol and drug fund should be a non-levied fund. That is just for when we have liquor sales. It has to go, a third has to go in the general fund, a third special alcohol and drug, and a third special parks. But we have not been seeing money come in for that, which is probably something we ought to look into because there's probably a few entities out in the county that's not doing reporting. So there's only a specific person that can request that. I've been designated as that for now. It could be the treasurer or it could be the clerk. Only one person can do that. And they can't disclose who is not certified. Yes, it would have to be private, but that's their job to report it. Okay. Intellectual disabilities, Tri-Valley, they did not ask for an increase. It stayed the same. Public safety, you'll see the $50,000 that was allotted for in '24, and so a budget amendment will have to be done for those dollars. And with the projections, unless there's something I'm not aware of, we'll need to at least bring in $10,000 in inmate housing this year. Fingerprinting fees, I don't think are supposed to well, maybe they are supposed to go in here. It's the VIN inspections that go in another fund. $40,000 for reimbursed expenses. We've stayed pretty consistent on that. And then that's pretty much all I'm aware of. We had a federal grant of $18,250 this year. I don't have any paperwork on that. Bill, can you tell us a little bit about what that is for?
That's the one you called me about. You called me on something,
Recently?
about a couple months ago. It's 18,250?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a, state of Kansas JAG grant
Okay.
for reimbursement for, investigative equipment.
Okay. Do we anticipate, that's the one thing I'm not sure if we anticipate any more revenue coming in, because that's what drives your expenditures. Anything else? Okay. So if that's the case, then at the end of the year, we'll have a negative cash balance of $3,573. Now, expenditures could come in less, that could change that. I'll have to make an adjustment somewhere so that we can at least start operations in the good for the next year. And we'll have to do a budget amendment in this fund. Any questions on that fund?
That was 3,000 and what? I can't see.
$3,573. Noxious weeds, we always try to protect $30,000 in that fund, because of how it's funded. We don't get for chemical sales, we only get how much, what's the percentage?
75% back.
75% back. So over time, you'll lose that cash and you'll have to replenish. But if we start building it in, like I'm showing on here, you will have the ability to always have that as your cash flow, because what happens, we get to the beginning of the year and we don't have enough money to buy chemicals. And so we've built that in automatically to make sure that we have enough cash reserves. And you can see that the levy, when you look over here to the right, the 0.708, where my little cursor's over, is less than what the prior year was. And Eric, do you have equipment that's needing to be done, or we just always move money there for sprayers and trucks?
We need to redo our spray system in our actual spray truck, but it's getting by for now, but it's definitely something that's gonna come in the future that we have to plan for.
We just don't know when it's gonna.
Okay.
We need to plan for it.
The next fund is Road and Bridge. This fund, remember that we collapsed the, I'm not going to go through the resources because they're pretty standard, what we get from the state of Kansas. Now, I will tell you that our federal fund exchange dropped this year and will probably drop next year. It keeps going down every year. And so the auditor, it's so hard to work without a key, without a mouse. If you look across here, the auditor combines the federal fund exchange up with the state of Kansas. So I separate them out so it's easier for us to see. Of course, we sold some assets last year, so we had a little bit more cash to work with. You'll see an increase of 1.3 over the 959. That's because we combined all the road and bridge, special bridge, and bridge and culvert into one fund. This will also help us in payroll from moving people, when we move people around in departments, it's all in one fund. It makes things a little bit more streamlined for all of us, and we don't have one go over the budget. So this is where I show that we collapsed those two funds in 25. Their budgets don't really change. The increase over the prior year is $107,901, and that's as a result of an increase of fuel of 5% and supplies of 3%.
I have a question, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reflection of the increased salaries because you combine the departments.
Yes.
Certainly a lot more than what's been collapsed.
I don't think so.
Well, the collapsed part shows about 200,000, and you're easily showing a $400,000 increase in salaries.
Let me look here.
Unless maybe they just,
I don't know if
the
I-
collapse is just
Will it
the
work?
commodities or,
But you gotta put them in down there. There shouldn't be any of those people right in the front.
it appears the commodities are pretty much the same. A little different, but
go back and look at the special bridge real quick, just a second.
Is it turned on? There. Been turned on.
Oh, I know what it is. Part of it is bonuses. When I went through and refigured, I built the bonuses into everybody's budgets rather than it being in the general fund. So that's part of it. It's not all of it.
And that's why back here on the bonus it said 0 instead of 50.
Yes. $209,000 of it is for collapsing the special bridge and that in there. You have one Department of Labor person, I think, that's affected in this fund, which isn't a lot. Where's my book? He's got 3 vacant positions in that fund right now.
Don't let me hold you up. You can explain later. Don't hold up everybody else.
No, it's part of it is 3 vacant positions, and then we built in a little bit of overtime of $10,000. But I think that's probably what's pushing us up and over a little bit is the 3 vacant positions, because I think they've been vacant on and off for a couple years. So that might be part of it. I can dig into the weeds on that though. Is that work now? Okay. So let me make a note of that. Special bridge, again, this is the one where we collapsed it into the other fund. The leases and everything moved over. EMS, we increased the $40,000 that we did for the transfer this year. So we increased the wages. And you can see that reflected in both 24 and 25. What it does not do is protect any cash reserves for that fund. And usually we would have about $100,000 left over to transfer to the EMS fund for future equipment needs like ambulances, but that will not allow for that. And how I came to these numbers were I looked at current wages. Of course, they get overtime at 40 hours. And so I took last year's overtime to give us a base to know what we're going to have for the next year. And then the increase in wages.
Susan, in this account is where you're going to carry the sales tax?
Sales tax. No, this is EMS.
I know, but where are you going to cover the EMS slash?
Oh, sales tax will
hospital
have to be its own fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it has to be a separate fund. And so those are all the levied funds. When we do the levied funds, you have to go in and put what the ad valorem tax would be before the rebate. And so that's how your mill rate is determined for your rebates on your neighborhood revitalization. And so if we were to change anything in like the general fund, I would have to go back in and redo these numbers, which essentially affects your neighborhood revitalization rebate. So you have several things you have to work through to get to a good number. Landfill. This is a non-levied fund, so it works completely off of user fees. We had a good year last year because we had a new consumer using the landfill. That is, oh, I probably, Yeah, page number. Did I even give you, I may not have even given it to you.
I didn't see it. Nope.
Because they're non-levied funds. I really just wanted to focus in on the levied funds because there's really not, these funds can come in another work session. The only thing that we might need to talk about are maybe the sales tax funds and how their transfers are being transferred in to cover some operation costs. So, real quickly, I'm gonna run through then, the road and bridge sales tax. I'm gonna pass out a sheet, and this comes every single time we do a bank reconciliation that the commission approves. And we have been noticing that sales tax has dropped pretty significantly. We're looking at our sales tax coming in at like 2020, 2021 numbers. And so I stayed conservative in the budget so that we don't overspend or think that we have money that we don't really have. And so we're projecting, unless, you know, we have some big developments here in town, we're projecting to be at about 1.3 million. That could change, that could free up some money towards the end of the year. We could maybe do a few more projects. But this is really only for hard surface roads. And so we limit what we transfer to the road and bridge fund. Last year we transferred 600,000. This year we're looking at transfer about 470, and then the next year 580. So you can see that the budget actually dropped 300,000, 200 to 300,000. I'm gonna skip back special parks and sewer district. Those are pretty straightforward. The jail sales tax fund though, again, I dropped it because our sales tax is down. And what I gave you kind of shows history of what our sales tax is doing. The top part is the countywide sales tax and use tax, and then that bottom part is for public safety. Just to kind of give you an idea of where our numbers have been coming in at.
Say that again now, the bottom part what?
The bottom part is for public safety. The public pays the jail sales tax. Not the very, the
middle part.
middle part.
Yep.
We had built in for 24, 300,000 to do some courthouse repairs. Later on, Shane will talk about, Shane and David will talk about maintenance that needs to be completed. But for the most part, we have been paying all the debt service for public safety out of this fund. And then we also made the decision last year to transfer 105 in operational and 250 for the next 2 years. But over time, we need to wean ourselves off of that because that sales tax is going to run out. And the debt service for this fund actually increases over time. And I think that is one of the last pages. If you'll flip back to page 5 and page 4 in the very back. If you look at your leases, you can see that for general obligation bonds, we still have 4.9 million, but if you look at, they increase every year just a little bit. And so we have to be prepared for that, and I've done projections long-term to see how that's going to affect us. The next page, we have jail pods that will also roll off, and that shows you the future lease purchase debt and what we'll be responsible for. So really, we need to protect our cash in this fund to make sure that we have enough for future bond payments.
I have a question real quick. It shows here that the the sheriff's vehicles, the Durangos and stuff on page 5, is that coming out of the sales tax, or is that gonna come out of my general budget?
That's coming out of sales tax.
Because I budgeted that in my regular budget for this.
You did budget it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's come out of the sales tax for 2 years now.
Okay. If it will be pushed back over to the budget that I submitted, that would help out.
Okay. So the in-car camera and the Durango is what you've been budgeting in your fund? Okay, so we'll
Well,
need,
just the cars itself, not the camera system.
not the camera system, okay. So yeah,
Because I'll have, Tahoes will come off this year, and Durangos will continue on for next year.
yeah, those have been coming out of that sales tax fund. So, yeah, we can reduce your budget by that amount then. Reduce your public safety budget, if you have it budgeted in there, we could reduce it by that amount, by that 38,000. You said you budgeted it in your regular operating
Yes,
fund?
the Durangos, yes.
Yeah, so we'll just take that out of there, and that will help the bottom line. Because it's already coming out of the sales tax fund.
I'm just trying to save the sales tax and put the sales tax money, leave it where it's at, offset it, but if you feel like you're comfortable in doing that, it's fine.
It's either, I mean, it's either way. You're gonna levy more. You'll levy more if we put it in your fund. We could reduce the levy and use the sales tax. It's still tax. It's just how we use
Oh, yeah,
it.
just how you use it,
Yeah.
where it's at.
Yeah. The money we've been receiving for opioid, the statute, we finally know what we're supposed to be doing with those dollars. We have to budget that fund. And so I just built in what we got the last year. They don't have anything that tells us how much we will be getting in the future. I do know there's several settlements out there. If you go out to, Department of Administration, I think that's the area you go to. It tells you a lot about the opioid settlement and who the people are that are having to pay suit. I know Walmart hasn't paid suit. I don't think CVS has. There's several that still have not paid anything yet.
Doesn't that fund that go to the sheriff?
It has very specific uses. I'll get you the statute so that you can talk about that. It's really to kind of fight the addiction.
Certain programs,
Yeah, there's certain
Courts.
programs, yeah.
usually falls under the courts.
Non-budgeted funds, I'm not gonna go through those. Those are just cash balances. Where those might come into play would be when we talk about, how we're gonna use our reserves. By law, if you have a capital equipment or reserve fund, you are supposed to have a 5-year plan. So anybody that has a fund that has that, you need to have a 5-year plan created and presented to the commission by the end of the budget cycle. So, this is where we are. Looks like we have about, to stay levy flat, we would need to cut $521,864 out of the budget. And that's just for your levied funds, so these funds. Just these
What was that
funds.
number again, Susan?
521,864. I don't know if Shane and David, you want to talk about your building stuff? And then we can move into our next part of it.
There should be some of those. If anybody wants them. They should already have them. For the last 20 years, nothing's been done to the building to speak of. And we've tried and we never had money, or other things have always came up. But we're to a point now where we've got pieces of the building decaying and falling off. We've got big old blocks up there that have no tuck pointing in them. We're running a boiler system that's 50 years old, that's got a 30-year lifespan. So Jim, a long time ago, asked us to put together a 10-year plan for the building, and this also has some IT needs in it on a 5-year basis. So over the course of the next 10 years, we're looking at, and this is at today's prices, and adjusted dollars, it's gonna go up. $1.1 million.
No, I don't. You can make a copy of mine.
Sealing the windows, tuck point and cleaning, a new roof. We're about, what, 5 years away from a roof? Maybe? Oh, it's starting to bubble up. It's gonna start causing problems. I mean, just the roof is $180,000. So
Got the 300,000 for 25 to start this.
that was what we originally had, and then we started digging into it and figuring out, like the roof, we weren't intended on doing the roof until we were up there and noticed how much it's bubbling up. And yeah, and then this one over here on this part of the building is bad as well. The new courtroom, they want to try to move all that equipment out of there. That's going to be $47,000. When these machines on top of the roof here, these units fail, there's $113,000 there. It's probably got to be put into a plan to do certain things every year. We also talked about those buildings across the street, the building there and the one out back. I had Angie come over from probation and look at that trailer. They might be able to get in there. Spider's thing is up in December. And Matt Wells said that they might be able to put the driver's license office out there in Legacy's building in some little room in the front. If so, because their lease is up this year too. That building probably needs sold. I mean, it needs a new roof, it needs the basement sealed. It's not really conducive for the public. That whole west end's not handicap accessible, so you couldn't really use it for anything like that. If we could get probation into that trailer, that would be ideal. But Angie was kind of worried about not having enough space. Yeah, so I don't know what, we were originally talking about moving to Public Works, but then they didn't need it. So there's just some decisions are gonna have to be made. I mean,
Well, you're right. We've been talking about working on this building for 20 years that I know of, or more. Nothing's ever happened, so.
well, and these, like the Mid-Continental, yeah, I've probably heard of it. The Mid-Continental bid is the last one I had them do. I didn't have them do another one, so I had them do 3.
Yeah.
And then David just got these ones on the boiler. I mean, I was shocked. Boilers cost $450,000. We also got our elevator inspected by the state the other day, and they're gonna come shut it down if we don't fix a certain list of things that's gonna be, what, about 10,000? Yeah. So we've gotta get that done immediately. And we certainly can't afford.
Well, yeah, because
we can't
there has to
afford
be
do
access
it.
to the courts.
Yes, yeah, you gotta fix that
Yeah.
yesterday, so yeah.
Yeah, so David's gonna get those people here to, and some of the stuff is unreasonable. We don't understand why they're asking us to do it. Like they want a cage built around the equipment down there, but nobody has a key to that room. So it's state rules. So that should give you an idea where we're at with the building. And then the IT stuff is, Bill's computers are, what, 5 years old now? 6?
I think Jimmy said there was a couple that were like 6 or 7 years old.
And now Microsoft's come up with a way to make you buy new machines, because if it runs Windows 10, they won't update it unless you pay $60 a machine per year. Then it goes to 120, then it goes to like 150 to force you to do that. So the IT stuff's based on a 5-year. Now, some of that stuff, Laura helps pay for some of her tech stuff. Patty does too sometimes when she has money. But I mean, these are things that you have to have them to do business.
Yeah. Well, you may not be reading this whole thing right now. What do you got targeted for 2025? money, the whole thing, or?
No, 2025, we put off the software, and hopefully that company doesn't get compromised again, but we're not gonna move any more of our data to their equipment. Laura really needs to go ahead and start converting hers over, because she's the one that's getting hit every time they get a problem. And Tyler could go ahead and we could try to work that out, and at least get the deeds on the new software. But then we're gonna skip a year, then we need to start plotting that out, and Susan has numbers for that.
Yeah, we'll have to, even if Laura switches, we'll have to do a duplicate accounting entry, because her stuff won't flow over to CIC, and so that'll require the treasurer to have to enter that manually. So,
Now, we did talk the software company into doing all the conversion stuff for free, because we'd be the first county in Kansas running all their stuff. And then they'll custom program stuff for us and whatnot. It's mainly, right now, it's all cities that are running their stuff.
But again, what do you think you need for 2025 to start this?
Well, 2025, we've got my budget figured.
So that's in your budget?
No, we took that software out.
Okay.
Because we knew how pinched we were gonna be for money.
Now, my question is the repairs that's in this report, how much,
Oh, for the building?
is that part of this 521?
the repairs for the building, could probably, a good chunk of it could get started through that, the jail sales tax also includes, facilities. And so we had already built that in for this year, so we could start addressing some of those needs.
Okay.
Not all of them, but some of them.
Well, to do the building, windows, and this building, it's under 200. And that's to clean tuck point, put in the new glaze on the windows.
Okay. But so that 200 is not in this 521 request, different that you told us from last year. Everyone's request, you said, was 521,000 more than last year.
Yeah, no.
Well, that number's not in
No,
this
because it's
number.
not a levied fund.
Okay, it's different.
It's different, yeah.
Okay. So this number would represent a 5 to 6 mil increase?
Yes, a three, I can tell you exactly. 3.9 increase. It would go from 59.907 to 63.827.
And that would recover the 521, 864?
Yes, yep. Highlight all that so you
Okay.
can see it.
Now, and I don't want this to sound wrong, but I'm going to ask. It's going to sound wrong. There was a lot of pay increases. Was that figured at 3%, 4%, 5%? I've seen a lot of pay increases in salaries. Or maybe not pay increase, difference in your report of the salary. Was that 3% for everyone or?
No.
No?
I didn't, if a department, like the clerk, the treasurer, let's see, the treasurer is only Department of Labor, Register of Deeds is only Department of Labor, the required, it's unfunded mandate. The clerk requested a $12,000 increase for a part-time person because there are years and years and years of files that haven't been filed. Correct? Yeah. And we found out that the previous clerk was using, the day-to-day operations was actually coming out of the general fund general line items instead of the clerk's line items.
I see.
And so, she's made the adjustment for that. I know Bill had figured in increases, I don't know what you figured in. What
For
percentage
wages,
increase for wages?
Just the 50,000 that was
Okay,
presented, and that was it.
okay.
I'm Department of Labor.
Oh, yeah, Brian's a Department of Labor, there were several that I said, we can go back to the general detail, and I'll show you again.
Now,
And we had one.
And you had one too, yeah.
the next,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Department of Labor is county clerk, county treasurer, county attorney added 2 positions. Register of Deeds is Department of Labor.
We had, I think it was 2 positions plus Department of Labor because
Yeah. It was.
Was it there an increase for you, Luke? You know, increase your salary?
And then,
Department of Labor.
Yeah.
emergency preparedness, IT, we requested a small raise in custodial, 2,000. Appraiser, he is requesting a small bump for his employees. I think they're the only ones that haven't had any kind of an increase over several years. Nothing there. Public safety.
The other thing we can start talking about with the buildings, do we still own the land out there east of the jail?
Mm-hmm.
We probably need to look at what the cost would be to put in Tiana's offices, court, and have it all together.
So that was the initial plan from the different phases. Phase one would be us being out there, and then the second one would be to have the court system, Tiana's office and stuff out there.
Because if we were to do something like that, what's left in the courthouse could probably move down here to Zach's building. And then somebody could do something with the courthouse. I mean, that's becoming increasingly more and more.
And that's been discussed for many, many years, so that's not a new thought, but that's a good thought.
I mean, when you're getting over $1.5 million
Yeah.
to do the stuff we need to do, you might as well try to figure a way to build new out there. It would cut down on all of his transportation costs. It would make it easier for Luke's guys to get people to court.
It'd be less of a safety issue too, because
Yeah.
they'd be leaving.
Yeah, they're really never leaving the building.
Yeah. One last question, Susan, before we leave this budget part of it. Several items you have listed as cash reserve, which is a good idea. What was the total that you try to put in there? I see several entries.
Let me run through them real quick. It won't take me but a second. General, protecting cash reserve of $250. Appraiser, nothing. Bridge and culvert, nothing. Employee benefits, 200,000. Noxious weed, 30,000. Hooters.
You getting my notes there?
You don't go for the food.
My lease is big.
No, nothing in those.
My increase revenue.
Gosh, that's stupid. Parks won't have one, jail sales tax, none of those. Nope, none of those. That's it. So what'd you come up with? You guys wanna take one of these and pass it around? This one? Got that one right here.
We're roughly about 480 cash reserve targeted.
Yep. Switch over to different. This is the same document that I presented last year. I just added 25 to it. It kind of shows you what's being levied. And the reason why there's more being levied this year and the previous year is because we started running out of cash reserves. And so that's what's causing you to have to levy more. You have dropped the levy 6.7 mils since 2020. But the change in cash reserves has been 1.3 million over since 2020. So that kind of gives you an idea of where things, what's happened over those few years. We've cut the levy, but we really didn't change expenditures, and so therefore That's all you did, is you used up cash reserves. Actual expenditures, this shows you the increase of 25 over 24.
Susan, would you estimate that 1396 lower in cash reserve over a 4-year period? Would the majority of that would be employee benefits?
No.
It wouldn't? Where would it come from then? We didn't increase services.
But you dropped, you kept your budget flat,
Right?
and so you didn't increase, as your budget was staying the same, you were lowering the levy, so less money was coming in.
Right.
So that's why that 1.3 million has taken place.
What would be your estimate of increased employee benefits in 4 years? $1 million?
I can tell you, it's on here. You 307,000. 200,000 of that is protecting the cash reserve, so really about 100,000. So we've just continually protected that 200,000 for increases, and that's not just for health insurance. That's if you give raises, we have to have that money there so that you can cover capers, unemployment, FICA. And so it's really necessary to be there in the event that we give a raise mid-year. You know, the increase in the general fund for this year, part of that is, I'll just start typing them out there. What were the funds that I told you? General, I know noxious weeds was 30,000.
And the other one was to protect the benefits, 200,000 for the
200,000.
benefits.
And there was another one. Is it the appraisal? No. What were those different funds that I told you, Jim? 250 for the.
250 for the cash holdover, 200,000 for the benefits, and 30 for the
That's 480. Yep.
noxious weeds.
So that's all the reserves that we're protecting. Now, we do have money set aside in a fund for general equipment reserve, but last I knew we were using those funds for other resources. There's 394,000 sitting in there, so I don't know what the plans are for that.
What fund is that? Is that in?
It's in a general equipment reserve fund. But if you were to move that over, that would be a one-time fix, and so you'd be in the same position this year that you're in next year if you kept your budgets as they are presented. So you'd have to come up with that amount of money next year. It would only fix this year.
How many levies, mills have we dropped since
6.7
2020?
since 2020.
If those mills weren't dropped, where would we be at right now?
We'd be in good shape. I would have to go back and look and see if you had kept it flat from 2020. Well, actually, I might have a document that shows that. Well, it shows it right here. It's the 1.3 million. That's what we lost in revenue.
By dropping the levy.
Yes. Because your budget stayed flat for 3 years, I think. There were a lot of budgets that stayed flat, and then a lot of you did give back, and so that helped with the cash reserves, the cash carryovers. But if you look at like the general fund, for example, we had 1.4 million in that fund, and we now have 167,000 that we're anticipating as a carryover. That's if nobody goes over budget. If somebody goes over budget, then that number drops, and then that makes it that much worse. So if you go over budget, somewhere we have to make up for that. And if we don't cut the next year's budget by the amount that we went over the previous year, then we're just playing catch up. And our cash reserves will continue to drop. And so if you don't protect a little bit of something, because there may be a murder trial. And if there is, we always built in about $50,000. That's probably not enough money. We've always built it in. If it happens, then you automatically have that less money. So
in your opinion, how do you correct that then?
well, I think everybody's budget should probably stay flat, and we need to start building our cash reserves back up.
Or leave the mills where they're at?
Or increase the mill levy.
To bring it back up to where it was in 2020.
Any valuation pickup is included in that already?
Yep.
So the 9% that we projected for, I guess, 25?
So here's the easiest way to look at that. I'll show you.
I mean, I don't know how the budget can remain the same when costs for certain things
everything's going up. Yes.
So it's looking anywhere from 3 to 7% increase of
In my opinion, we can't
equipment
keep
and stuff. How can you do that?
lowering the levy. I mean, I pay quite a bit of taxes too, but we can't keep lowering the mills and with everything going up the way that it is.
To answer your question, Michael, our assessed valuation, I'm just gonna highlight this so it's easier for everybody to see. The assessed valuation was 119 million in 23, and we always build our budgets around that assessed valuation. And so it went up to 126 million, then it went up to 133 million. So we are capturing some new revenue. Some of that revenue is because of the housing crisis. It's because houses are selling for more than what they were worth years ago. And so that's what's causing some of that to go up, but also we might have somebody falling off of a neighborhood revitalization program. Or we might have I don't know if we have any IRBs that have come off.
Only have one, and it comes off after this year.
Yeah, so we'll be able to take advantage of some of those things.
That was reflected in your deficit.
Yeah. It's all built in there.
And Susan, did you just mention, I didn't hear, what was the increased valuation amount for over a 3-year period?
Over a 3-year period?
Yeah, the amount of dollars of the increase.
The assessed valuation?
Yeah.
It went from,
I can't see that far.
yeah, no, I was trying, she changed it on me. It was.
I know, she said what the difference.
119 to 133 approximately.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So-
Yeah.
is that what you're wanting? Or
No.
the levy?
the revenue.
The revenue is, you've lost 1.3 million.
But the budget stayed flat and assessed valuations went up, which meant more revenue
Right.
per the same flat mill levy. So how does that work if the budget stayed flat? And that's an honest question because
Well,
assessed valuation should increase more revenue.
so your
At
net
this-
expenditure was, in 2023, was 16.2. Your net expenditure in 24 was 16.2.
Okay.
And your anticipated net expenditure is 17.6 for next year. And that's a variation of all those things we just talked through. So you were flat for 2 years. you were able to take advantage a little bit of the revenue. Yeah, 2 years ago. Let's see, expenditures here, 14 million. So we're anticipating less expenditures this year. 13.9 versus 14.9. So we're up $1 million. So 500,000 increase. Because you need to cut 500,000 to get flat.
So you're saying a $500,000 increase in the requests we received, or, okay.
Yep.
But you never, maybe you answered, I didn't understand. What was the difference? Valuations went up. What, that meant more money per mill levy. Should
But
have.
if you lowered the mill levies.
We didn't lower it. We left it flat for a couple of years. If it was flat for a couple of years and valuations went up, that should mean more revenue coming in, correct or not?
I think the mill levies went down the last year.
Not the last 2 years, we've been flat.
Yeah, mill levies went down.
We went
You
flat
requested.
on budget.
We only
but
went
not-
flat from 23 to 24.
Yeah. Last 2 years. What it said, yeah,
On
2
budget
years.
or no?
On levies.
20 to 2024 is 4 years.
Budgets went up just a
Me too.
tad. So your budget went up just a tad. It's hard to, so you have to look at it. 13.915, 14,000,005. So these are all your levied funds. Those are the ones that affect taxes. So in 2023, you spent 14,055,000. In 2024, you're expecting to spend 13.9. And the reason why you're not spending more is because there's less cash coming in for 24. It's, part of it is transfers, part of it is our sales tax is down because we have a sales tax that comes from and goes over and helps the jail operate, or it goes over and helps Road and Bridge operate. So we're really down in expenditures because we have less revenue coming in. Now, if we'd had what we thought, we would be up a couple $100,000, but because we know sales tax is coming in low, we don't have that money to spend, so your expenditures are naturally gonna be down.
So if your valuations are up and your sales tax number's down, that's why. That's,
Sales tax.
Well, that's less transfer money, but in my books, it didn't,
yeah.
sets valuation up, mill levy flat, that should be a different number generated, but
But it's only,
if you have to transfer more out of the sales tax,
119.
that's not a mill levy. Sales tax does not generate by the mill.
So, 1 mil would generate $6,000 more from 22 to 23.
Per mill. And what was the mill levy, 60 what?
59.
69, so that's roughly 420,000. Okay.
So Susan, is public safety, are we still part of the general fund, or are we separate? 'Cause
We
in the
have
past,
you separated out.
Okay,
Um,
didn't know if we were put back in or not.
no. I had that option to do that this year, but I chose not to. We really need to do a resolution to have that fund separated, because we don't have one to make it legal.
I was just making sure we were separate.
Yeah, you are separate. So whatever cash comes into your fund, you have left over at the end of the year stays in your fund, and so you have that to operate on the next year.
Second question, when we, for the sales tax, Piper Jeffrey was the finance group that actually did the study. Has anybody went back and looked at their findings comparing to the years that we started the collecting of the sales tax to current to find out if we are within what their recommendation was
Yes.
the collection, or if they built in a safety net just in case if these were some of the issues that were brought up?
So let me show you how I project on our sales tax, if I can find it real quick.
So maybe we need to have the representative from Piper Jeffrey to come back. And
I don't think so, because, so your
Free
sales
charge.
tax, and the reason why I say that is your sales tax is coming in at roughly $1 million. But when I do my long-term projections out to 2039, I use 800,000 as my revenue. So I'm a couple $100,000 less than what they project, and then I build in all the debt service that's due. So I feel like there's already a cushion built in there.
Okay.
And I can show you that, how that's all projected out, even with buying cars, you know, every 2 years like we had talked about. But the problem is when we get down to that final year, I won't be here, but someone will have to determine how to absorb that into the regular budget to stay on
And that was
a
my
side.
question, you know, when I said this should be coming out of my regular budget
Yeah.
instead of the sales tax, so that money should stay within the sales tax to pay off the
Yeah,
bonds and stuff.
and we could pay out, I mean, if we do that, what's gonna happen is your levy's gonna go through the roof, because we have now become dependent on it. So, unless you can find me enough revenue to cover it.
So when is this budget, is there gonna be another meeting, another discussion?
Yes, this is really just to show the commission where we are financially if we were to say yes to all these budget requests. And I feel like it needs to be a whole nother session with the entire group, because that's where you kind of sit down and talk about what can we give, who can make cuts. Ultimately, it's their decision, but I'm sure they would welcome your input.
When is that projected date, sorry for interrupting you, when is that projected date of that next supposable meeting?
I have it scheduled for every, I think it's every meeting. July 1st. Yeah, I have it scheduled so that every commission meeting up to the point that we have to certify it to the clerk. Because if we exceed the revenue neutral rate, the 56, we have to certify to the clerk by July 20th. And so we will have to have some idea, even if we were to stay flat at the 59.907, we would have to certify to her that we are exceeding revenue neutral. Then that gives us till October to make all the adjustments that we need to do.
So technically, we have until October,
Yeah.
whatever the adjustments is.
Yeah, yeah. If they decide they want to go revenue neutral, then we would have to cut really deep. So,
Thank you, Susan. That
you're
it?
welcome. Yeah, I really don't have anything else unless anybody has questions. Yes, Trace. I do want Trace to talk about EMS vehicles, and we're in kind of a predicament, probably the same as like the sheriff. When you go to order a vehicle, you are 2 or 3 years out before you're getting that vehicle. And under cash basis law, you're required to book the expense the day that you order it. That's on anything that we do. If we call and contract for services, we have to book the expense that day. That's why at the end of the year, it's so important that people are turning in their receipts or expenses, because we get audit violations if we don't have those booked. But what you run into is we don't have enough cash flow in the EMS fund, and so therefore we'll have to do a lease to cover that. And so you're paying for a piece of equipment that you don't have for 3 years. Now, by the time you get to the 3 years, you've probably almost had it paid off. But if in a perfect world, we probably should have lease purchased this last one to help us have some cash in the fund, so that every 5 years, I think 5 years is about a good year to roll off an ambulance.
Yeah.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
You would have enough cash flow all the time if we're able to capture some more revenue. And that's something we're working with the set-off program. That's kind of confusing, but
We're kind of behind at this point with them, just because all of our trucks, except for one truck, are all old Mercy trucks. So they've been in service for years and years and years. And we've just been repairing them and whatnot, and they're getting us by, but we've got a used truck coming, hopefully within the end of the week, or maybe next week, at the latest. And then our brand new truck should be here this fall sometime. But to order a new truck, if we were to do that today, we would be looking at the end, so the fourth quarter of 2027 before we would even see that truck. So, and along with that means price increases every year. So they build in a certain amount of price increases, so 8% basically every year. So if we bought it, based on the truck that we're getting this fall, if we ordered right now, it would be in the neighborhood of $389,330. Now, if we waited another 30 days, because in 30 days they're going to be rolling into 2028 pricing, and 2028 before we can even see it, we'd be looking at $420,476. That's just that increase that Ford. So our chassis that we bought from Ford was $66,000 on this new truck that we're getting this fall. If we were to order a new one, it would be going up to at least $80,000. And they try to put in some buffer, but that's the only thing. That and the cots that we put in the back, those are the only two things that have the potential to fluctuate. They could go up or down. Most likely they're not going to go down, but we try to build in enough cushion to where it doesn't go up, and if it does, it's only by a couple $1,000s, if that. And I talked with the rep today. He said that an option would be to go ahead and put it on order. Now that might be a problem, Susan, I don't know, based on what you said. If we put it on order today, that locks in that $389,000, with the exception of the chassis price possibly going up. But then if in 2025 or 2026 we get to that point and we go, hey, we can't, we don't have the funds for this, we're not going to be able to do it, we can back out of it with no strings attached. They don't, force us to pay any kind of money. We just give our slot to somebody else and somebody gets their truck sooner, essentially.
Okay.
So that's an option. I just, with how long things are taking to get, to us, it's something that probably needs to be looked into seriously.
Susan, to ease the upfront costs, how many years are we allowed to lease purchase it? 3 or 4?
you could do 5 to 10. But 10's not reasonable for them because they need to be replacing them.
But maybe 5 would be reasonable to reduce that upfront cost for 2025 or 2024. We ordered it.
And
you had to budget your lease payment, correct? Not the whole thing.
Right, just the lease payment.
Okay.
also, to kind of put it into perspective, the newest truck that we have is 2021, I believe, is when we got it, and it's got around 90,000 miles on it.
Wow.
So that's how much we're putting on these trucks, and we've got trucks that are, 2010, our oldest truck is a 2002. So they're old, they're getting mileage, they're getting to where things are breaking on them. Yeah. It's not to the fault of any of our driving necessarily, it's just they're getting old. They're getting old and a lot of miles. So
I want to kind of show you just real quick what it does. So Bill had made the comment that he had built in that lease. So if I were to take off $38,000 off his budget for this year and next year, you can see that it moves the levy here. And so if I were to go back to my combined hearing, we're at 3.349 now. So it doesn't really even hardly put a dent in it at $60,000 because 1 mil is worth $133,000. So that kind of tells you have to really just, but now we're down to 445 that we have to try and come up with, just to stay flat. lot of numbers, lot of
Lots of numbers.
discussion. I don't know how everybody wants to handle it moving forward. If you, wanna have another work session like this and we just walk through it, or if you want the commission to come to you directly if they feel like that they need to make cuts in your areas. I don't know what the best process is, cause this is a significant amount.
I would suggest looking at ordering an ambulance, possibly, if we can.
Okay.
I think what he gentleman just told us makes sense. We can lease it for 5 years, that will help the upfront cost.
I'll do some projections on that to see what it'll cost. And then we'll try to we need to put together a 5-year plan that shows once one rolls off, how it affects and how much money we have to have at the end of the year.
If I can make a suggestion
Yeah.
to your next meeting, I would recommend this group get together again and look at ways to trim a little bit. You know, from where I sit every day, I get hit with our high property tax, and I get hit with businesses not coming to Bourbon County because of high property tax. So to go out and discuss a 3 to 5 mil increase is pretty tough. Pretty tough to do, I'll just be honest with you, because I've been told we have businesses don't come to Bourbon County because of our tax rate. And that hurts everybody.
Probably won't wanna come here either if there's a high crime rate.
You're right, yeah, we haven't cut his at all, or yours. We've increased your budgets, I believe. So, what I'm saying, we just gotta be careful what we do here, because we gotta have growth. If we're not growing, we're not going nowhere, so. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Susan, for me anyway.
Anything?
Well, I was just gonna get ready to say that, I know that you're asking about figuring out a way to try to cut. I know that several of us don't give back money at the end of the year, but, I don't want the consensus to be, we're staying revenue neutral or dropping the mill levy come hell or high water. This is an election year and this is what I want to do, because, and I don't want to find out, and I'm sure nobody else does, that somebody's being cut or something, because that's happened to me. You know, they cut my person without even, I read it in the paper, you know. So I don't want, just because this is an election year, that we don't try to help fix our problem.
I agree.
And I've got some money in my tech that if I need to donate to Shane for some of the computers, whatever, as long as it's used for technological, I can do that.
And I appreciate what you're saying, because I came here one day as a public works director and I was told it's cutting me like $435,000. There's an error in the employee benefit fund. So Road and Bridge lost $400,000 in 24 hours.
I was here.
So,
Never got it back.
Pardon?
We never got it back.
I know, so it's, I agree with you, and there's no way we can stay revenue neutral, and
No.
that's impossible.
So,
No.
Susan, you may hit it. Did tax evaluations go up again?
Yes. So we're taking advantage of that even in this number.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah.
As a
You know,
commissioner, I
the
appreciate
only
what y'all
other thing
do.
I could know that is if there's a revenue that I've missed, if you go back through your budget page and you see that there's a revenue that I've missed, let me know. I look at the current audit and 5 years back to kind of gauge at an average. And like sales tax is pretty blatant. We know what it's doing. It's dropping. You know, probably COVID years, everybody had all this extra money that they were spending, and so that's why we were benefiting from that increase in sales tax. And so, yeah, and so we're now at a point where we're probably back to where we should be.
Everybody's going to eat in Kansas City.
Yeah, yeah.
And did they not drop some of the food sales tax percent?
It didn't affect
That
us.
doesn't affect us.
That's just state.
Okay.
And again, where are you going to carry this quarter-cent sales tax, you get
It
a
is in
separate
its
account.
own fund, and I actually have it up there. I just don't have enough information to put a budget in yet.
But the fact that it's tied up for 5 years, you could use that as part of your reserve.
The sales tax, for the emergency services?
But healthcare, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah. No.
because it has the caveat, or we could end it at any time. We'll make sure.
Yeah. No, it'll stay in that fund and only be used for those purposes. And I don't know what those numbers are yet, so I'll have to, I mean, I know projecting probably, if it starts in October, we probably will receive about $25,000 in December. And then, by the end of,
Shouldn't get anything till January.
well, October is when you start the sales tax, and they're usually about 2 months behind. So you have a month to,
You may not get it until March, because it doesn't start until October.
right, but people that collect in October have to have it to somebody, have to have it to state by November. There's a chance that we could get some in December, if people actually do what they're supposed to do. So it's very conservative, 25,000 and then 600,000 for the next year. Yeah,
That's a plan to stay.
yeah. If we wanna have I know it's hard on Tiana to have a day meeting, so I don't
mind having a day meeting, it's just that my dockets, because now we have 2 district judges and a magistrate judge, so we basically have court, and I've got 2 attorneys, myself and my assistant county attorney. Dockets start at 9, and they typically go through mid-morning, depending on how many cases, and they start anywhere from 1 to 1:30. So, I'm not asking everybody to work around me, but, I mean, I've missed meetings, I don't like to miss meetings, because I'm an elected official too, and I wanna be a part of it and be educated and be able to share and put my 2 cents worth in, but I can't tell a judge,
yeah. So what
have fun with
works
that,
best
because I'm
for
gonna be
you?
downstairs.
What works best for you?
Honestly, mid-morning, if that works for everybody else. I know the commissioners are busy. Everybody's busy, everybody has stuff to do, but mid-morning, mid-afternoon. I typically do Judge Ward's docket, and it doesn't take all that long. It doesn't take me from 9 till 12, or
Okay.
1:30 to 5.
So, 8 o'clock meeting, is that what you think?
Not a morning person, but I'm happy to
Me
be
either.
here since everybody's, I'll just bring another coffee. They have extra large now, so. If I'm not gonna get presents at my door at my house from anybody here, I can do 8 o'clock. That was a joke.
Maybe what you wanna do is throw out some dates to find out compared to what her docket is, so that she can schedule accordingly. Cause
Well,
those
my-
dockets are out usually about a month out ahead.
Yeah, but the judges can schedule, sometimes Judge Ward will be like, hey, I have free time here, and I didn't have anything on that date. And
But if she had.
now I do.
But as long as you know that there's a date, then you can.
Why don't you throw some dates at me?
I don't wanna monopolize the meeting
But we want you
time and
present.
date and stuff.
Yeah, but we want you present,
I wanna
so-
work with everybody else, so whatever.
I mean, I personally, anytime.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not, you're not gonna inconvenience me.
Same.
I don't mind.
You just tell us a date and time. Yep, you're
No.
choosing.
Okay, you put me on the spot.
You're choosing.
Well, just figure something out and she can email us.
24/7.
I was
What do you think I'm
gonna
like?
make a small
Seven?
elected
Yeah.
official
No,
joke.
just kidding.
Actually have a real job.
Yeah, me too.
And if you want to do a
Say, I
4 to
have a real
5 or something like that, you know.
Honestly, that would probably be a little bit better.
Yeah. I
If
mean,
that
Works for me.
If it works for everybody else.
I didn't think I was getting a real job with Darby.
I think she said 5 a.m.
Yeah, 4 to 5 a.m.
Mine too, I get.
No, I don't like
I'm
it.
out.
We don't get anything
If that's what
done.
you wanna do, I can be here 4 or 5 in the morning, that's cool.
We don't get anything done.
As long as you're buying donuts and coffee, I'll be here at 4 in the morning.
okay. So Tiana will let us know, and then I'll send out an email to everybody, and we'll just have another session. Probably need to have one before July 8th, so that I can take another one back, and I'll just do it in a regular commission meeting. And then if there's suggestions from the commissioners, please come meet with me and let me know what your thoughts are, or if you have questions about specific things, That way I can kind of dig into them.
Is that one?
Yeah, it's Monday. So,
That's next month. I can almost always be here for, so.
one thing that July 20th will come quicker than we realize. The commission will need to be thinking, are we gonna stay revenue neutral? If we're not, then we can go ahead and certify to the clerk, that we plan to exceed that. So that'd be one thing I would encourage you to think about.
So you're looking at July 21st is the next meeting, July 20th is the next meeting, correct?
No.
July 20th is a Saturday.
Okay, I heard July 1st.
July
July
1st.
Any other
eighth.
day.
We have to make a few decisions before then. I think she said July 1st, didn't you?
That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, July
Is that a
1st.
Monday?
It's
That's
a
next
Monday.
That's Monday.
Next Monday from 4 to 5, you wanna do that? July 1st? Everybody go back and crunch numbers.
You said 4 to 5?
Yep, 4 to 5. Okay.
Thank you.
How'd they do that?
That's what it is.
You're all right.
Yeah. I don't like microphones.
But anyway,
That would, yeah, that would help.
yeah, that's why, I wanted to know.
Yeah.
I heard you came in, I wasn't there.
Yeah, you're always gone. I think you know I'm coming, so you just get the hell out of there. It's supposed to be just hot there as it is out here.
When we talked to Brandon, they came out and checked it.
Do we know?
We need to see you, like, we leave.
I need to talk to you too, so it's fine. I gotta make a phone call, catch you.
We'll be here especially.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get it, I'll just come here.
We've had violation deals lately. Back when it first took over, it was a matter of going out and checking septic tanks, replace all, checking new inspections.
Right.
Easy stuff. Now we're running into, well, we got one at
Very strict about their laws.
the trailer park coming in.
We don't get to designate the farm.
On the old, yep.
Well, we got a trailer there that, people have been following up the guy for a year. We just found out about it this last